Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. Today, I have the lovely Erin Wilson joining me from Barefoot Shoes Australia. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining me. You're actually one of the top of my list about talking to because as you know, I'm a barefoot family. We are a barefoot family of shoes. So, as I said to you before, it was about helping mums and parents and kids understand the benefits of barefoot shoes, not being too preachy, but also barefoot shoes are amazing.
Yes, we can agree there.
Yeah. And like you said, you were saying sorry to people for once you do wear barefoot, you are going to have to throw out all of your other shoes because they're just not going to feel right.
100%. It is definitely the disclaimer at the start.
Yeah.
But also that we said, it's maybe not for everyone and that's cool too, but just here to give out the information and sort of spread the word so people who don't know about it can find out a bit more.
Exactly. And I think there's lots of confusion from different experts explaining different things about whether to wear barefoot shoes, whether not to. So it's good to, we're covering a lot of that in today's episode. So all thumbs up. I would love you just to tell a little bit about yourself and why you sort of entered this barefoot world.
Yeah, for sure. So I in the big picture, I'm relatively new to the barefoot world. So uh, I'm a runner. So I started trying to run longer distance. So I was always running sort of 5Ks here and there, without any huge problems. But first had knee problems actually when in my mid 20s and was told by the doctor just to sort of um, do less of what I was doing, which was a gym exercise. And I just let that go for many years. And then when I started to get seriously into running was after my second child, who's now 5. And if I ran any more than 10 Ks, I would get really bad knee pain. And it was ongoing to the point where I wasn't able to sleep properly at night. And so then started going to all sorts of specialists to try and figure out what it was. And again, came to the answer that just run less and it'll hurt less. And that was what I was told by professionals, which I didn't want to accept and
Not
started
as
to
a
dig.
runner, no.
Yeah,
Someone
no,
tells
that's
you
it.
not to run.
Exactly, exactly. So I thought I'd dig a little deeper, but started trying all different shoes. And it was one day when I was in a shoe shop, and because we live quite rural, I had to travel to the city to try on shoes. So I thought I'd just try on every pair that they had to make use of the trip. And I landed on a pair of Ultras. Uh, and when I put them on, the room was amazing. So the wide toe box just felt so comfortable. And I just remember thinking this is the first time that my foot is determining its shape and movement and not the shoe. So it's like all of a sudden my foot is making the decisions and not the shoe. And they were so comfortable that I went with those. And then sort of went down a bit of a rabbit hole about the information about barefoot shoes and yeah, and why have a wide toe box and why have them thin and flexible and all the other benefits to be gained, and started to go a bit more minimalist. But I really sort of thought that this needs to be an everyday thing. So before I worry about how I run, I need to look at how I stand and how I walk. Those are the things that I'm doing more often and are what's going to affect the pain more. So then I found that there was loads of barefoot shoes on the market, but none in Australia. So they were all in Europe or the US. And so COVID had hit and I was no longer a travel agent, which was my previous job. And so I decided to start importing the shoes and open an online store. And I think just over 3 years later now, we have Barefoot Shoes Australia as it is today.
Wow. Thank you, COVID, then.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
I love that you spoke about how you had knee pain, so you went to go and barefoot shoes benefited that because there's lots of information out there which says you need more padding, you need more support in your shoe because you have knee pain.
Yes. Yes, and sometimes it seems like we go one way or the other. So it's seeming like we've we're all sort of suffering with something, and it's often knee pain, or further up it can be your hips or your back, and we're going either, oh, we must have more cushioning, or people will discover the more minimalist route. I think that's, I guess the cushioning is one element. So of to be a barefoot shoe, I guess to explain the basics, it
Yes.
needs to be wide, so your toes are free to splay. It should be thin so that you can essentially feel the ground somewhat, get some sensory feedback from the ground, and it should be flexible so that your foot, all the muscles and joints can move as they were designed. And of those characteristics, so there's a couple of extras that are good as well, but those are the key points. And of those points, there are varying levels. So, there's varying levels in barefoot shoes, even of how thick the cushioning is, how flexible they are, and how wide they are, because our feet are all different and we all want different things. But back to sort of what you were saying about having more cushion, having being told that we need more cushioning because you've got the knee pain, because we're thinking about the force that's put through your body when you walk. But what we need to look at is the way we're walking. And the more cushioning we have, we walk in a way that allows, I guess, well, it causes the function of the gait to put pressure on the joints further up. So, for example, if you're running and you've got more cushioning, we tend to overdo this heel strike, and that forces a lot of the pressure up through your knee and your joints further up. Whereas if you're in very minimalist shoes and you can feel the ground, you are not going to land with a heavy heel because it hurts. So you're essentially forced to bring your foot more under. And the same when you're walking as well, to, yeah, I guess walk in a way where you're not putting that pressure on. The other thing that I think is probably important to note on that is that the cushioning also creates this stiffness in a shoe. So our feet are really quite amazingly designed to have a spring function. Now, when we have this arch support and the cushioning and the stiffness, your arch can't flatten and your foot can't function in a way that it can use its natural spring to push you off the ground. So when it can't have that function, that movement that it was designed to do, then that movement happens somewhere else. It can be your ankles or your knees or your hips, like I said, that then has to compensate for those things.
And that makes so much sense. Like we are thinking of the force and the impact on the ground. So that's why we lead straight towards cushioning. But then, like you said, if you had more minimalist shoes, you're able to spread your feet and use it better so that you can spring off rather than the heavy load. I really
Yeah.
like that thought. And I actually have a few, I was thinking then, I've got so many clients in mind of saying, why don't you convert to barefoot shoes? Because they're runners and they have knee pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people will convert and then they'll say like my feet were too sore when I tried barefoot shoes, so I have to go back. But there's a few things, I guess, and one of them is that if you've it it depends on your starting point. So if we've been wearing traditional or modern shoes, um, for a very long period of time, our feet have been affected by that and the shape and the function. And it's like I heard a great analogy um, a while ago saying that it's like putting your arm in a cast for 10 years and then taking it off and expecting to be able to do a push-up.
Yeah.
Like those muscles have not been worked and used, and like anything, they get wasted away. And I was talking to Andy Bryant yesterday, who's a podiatrist based in Melbourne and massive advocate for barefoot shoes. And he said maybe at the end of a workday or at the end of a day being on his feet for the whole time, his feet will feel a bit sore. And he
Yeah.
says, yeah, but that's because I used them, right? The same as if you used any muscle that they're working. Oh, yep, I used my feet and they're a bit sore the next day. And that makes
Yeah.
sense.
That's so true. But we pull away from that soreness, don't we? I do remember when I was first wearing barefoot shoes that they were sore for a good like 4, 5 days. But
Yeah.
then they were all good.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty quick, really. If you've been dealing with years and years of knee pain, a few days of
And
foot
wearing
aches.
stiletto heels and tiny
Yeah.
little pointy slide
Yeah. You're doing
shoes.
well then, aren't you?
I think I was always meant to be in barefoot shoes. I just wish I'd known years ago
Me
about
too.
that.
Yeah.
Um, is it possible to go barefoot shoe and then change to normal shoes and mix it up all the time? Or is it best to just go barefoot and not confuse your feet?
It's a really good question. And I don't think there's a simple answer, unfortunately.
Mm,
The recommendation is to mix it up and go slowly. So
right.
the apart from the fact that it is expensive to just change your whole wardrobe of shoes,
Yeah.
so
Or you
I
could just have
use
one pair of shoes for the rest of your life.
that's the only pair you wear possible.
Yep.
I do sort of say to people to start with to choose whatever you wear the most, whether it's your work shoes or you go for a long walk in the morning, maybe your walking shoes or something. Um, And then you can still, if you're finding your feet are fatigued from that sort of using these muscles that weren't before, and you're having to stretch out your calves because your calves are shortened from the heel raise in almost all other shoes, that you can intermittently put your other shoes back on and help make the transition slowly. Personally, I found that the muscle soreness and the tight calves were better than joint pain. So I just went all in. And to be perfectly honest, that's just my nature anyway. Once I believe in something, all in, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, right, Monty, Arthur, James, you're all wearing barefoot shoes from now on. It's like, oh, crap,
Yes.
okay.
Yep, 100%. So that is my nature anyway. But um, it was like if I can't feel the ground, and particularly because I'm running as well, if I can't feel the ground, yeah, but even when I'm walking, to be fair, my arch collapses and my knees roll in, and then I get that ongoing knee pain. So for me, I was like, you know what, my feet are a bit sore because I'm walking on rocks and my feet aren't used to it, and my calves are pretty tight because I'm, running on sand and uphill. But that was the better option for me, personally. I definitely don't recommend starting with runners. That's probably one area where people went wrong when Barefoot Shoes sort of got a big name with the book Born to Run, and all the runners went, sounds like a great idea, strapped on a pair of barefoot runners, went for a 10K fast run and went and he injured themselves and was like, oh no, this is a terrible
Barefoot shoes
idea.
are wrong, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that brings you back to that, you've taken your arm out of a cast and doing a push-up incident where that's not the way to start. And that's why I did open this store with the focus on everyday shoes. Because, and I say it to all my running friends who are curious about my shoes, I'm like, don't worry about the runners. It's your everyday. It's that stuff you're wearing and the way you're standing and walking, is what you want to start with for sure.
Um, Going back to your concerns with your arch support and your rolling in, did
Mm.
you just carry on with barefoot shoes and things improved in that way, or did you have to do work on strengthening your feet in other ways and rolling out your calves and maybe strengthening your glutes and things like that?
Yeah, so I have done additional work. I could benefit from a lot more than I do. There's two types of people in the world. There's ones who do their physio exercises and ones who don't. And
I don't think
I'm,
anyone does their physio exercises. They may start to, but
yeah,
they always drop off.
they go. I find it
Rehab's
really
boring.
difficult. Yeah, so I'm definitely not a physio exercise person. So I do a very minimal amount of work, especially for how many kilometers. So I probably average about 30 kilometers of running a week. Um, So yeah, the amount of work I do is minimal, but I do know that it helps. So if you can be helped and your progress will be helped by doing things like rolling out. So that was a big one because it really just helps those muscles become sort of looser and it just helps with the process to be rolling out.
When you say
But
rolling out, just using a foam roller to roll out
yeah,
people's calves and feet,
calves and
especially.
feet, a lot of attention on your feet, just to help them spread and become more natural, which will then in turn help with the walking and running patterns.
Yes.
So that the toe spaces
Mm.
are a big help. So definitely for people with bunions, I always find are a huge help as well. I wear them as well because I have really poor circulation, and I find just putting on the toe spaces, which helps my toes spread out, I can actually feel the difference in circulation with those.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was actually told recently I needed to have toe spacers, and I've been looking at them online. I was like, cool, I'll just get some from Temu. No, you're actually meant to get the proper hard ones that are fitted as well.
Mm.
This is what she was saying, as opposed to the very soft, rubbery, because it's
Yeah.
just not enough space. They're not
A-
enough.
Again, a really tricky one. I actually have in my to-do list,
Yeah.
and I had it on today, but I've had it on for the last few days as well, to create a post for Instagram about all the different types of toe spaces, which way they're meant to go and which ones you're meant to get.
Oh,
This is
please.
my sign to actually go and record that, because there are lots of different types. The short answer is whatever works for you, and sometimes you've just got to try different ones. I've tried all different ones. I don't wear them in my shoes, so I
Okay.
don't wear those hard ones for different sizes. I actually really like the soft, squishy ones, and
Hmm.
I just wear them around the house for half an hour at a time, whenever I remember.
I love that. And you're going to need to speed up that post for your blog because I'm going to share that with listeners
Yes,
once it's done, and I'll create it, add it into um, the section there.
brilliant.
Um, how can people listening who have never worn barefoot shoes in their life, you said to go for the everyday shoe, but is there something specific? Should they go with more padding first, or should they just go all in?
Yeah, it depends on a bunch of things. We're all so different, and our starting points are all really different. So the
I do,
shape of,
yeah.
someone's feet and what state they're currently in, is going to be very different. So someone who never wears shoes in their house and or at the beach and already, spends a lot of time barefoot, is going to be in a different position to someone who wears the high heels that are pointed and, have already got bunions and hammer toes and things like that. So it really is a personal thing. Um, Transitional shoes are not a bad idea. There are some with a bit more cushioning, but it depends so much on the individual. I
Mm.
I often say to people to see a podiatrist or a physio, um, who is supportive or is already on board with barefoot shoes, because you're going to risk seeing, if you just go to anyone, they're going to tell you, no, that's no good. But if you've already decided that you want to give barefoot shoes a try, it's a good idea to see a physio or podiatrist who's going to help you with the transition of your particular feet, but is supportive of the concept of going to barefoot shoes.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely looking for that sort of expert who is more for the barefoot shoes. Otherwise, you just end up getting confused, don't you? It's like, but now my podiatrist or physio said don't wear barefoot shoes, but this is what do I do?
Yeah, it gets very confusing. I always like to go with the professionals who are going to affirm what I already want to do.
Yes, and again, it's going with your gut. It's going with what you want to do, and you're finding that expert who's going to help you along your path, isn't it?
Yeah, because there's different opinions varying in a huge way.
Mm.
And it's, the medical field isn't a rabbit hole that I want to go down at the moment, but there's so much, misinformation and different opinions that are put on people that it does become confusing. We do
Yes.
have on our website, so on at the top there's a info tab, and if you scroll to the bottom of that page, it actually has a heap of Australian-based podiatrists and physios who we already recommend. So that's a
Amazing.
starting point.
That's brilliant. So newbies, obviously they can go with cost is a thing as well, isn't it, when it comes to barefoot shoes? I constantly get that a lot from people saying, I'm just not going to buy barefoot shoes because they're too expensive.
Yeah, yeah, I totally understand. I personally would prefer to have less shoes, um, and ones that are just supportive of my health and function.
Yep.
Uh, that would
That's
definitely be a key.
that's how
Um,
I've got around it.
yeah, yeah, and that's a perfectly good way to do it. I think if that's what you want to do, to just say, I just at this stage we'll try and have less shoes to make it affordable. But in the last couple of years, the market has just gone crazy. Like there are so many more brands than would have been previously available, that the cost is coming down. There are other options out there that are not crazy expensive.
Yeah, and I feel like the more we buy barefoot shoes, the more there is a need for it and the lower the cost is going to get. So,
Exactly. It's like organic food, right? I remember when I started trying to buy organic fruit and veggies, everyone's like, can't buy that because it's too expensive. Like, well, if we all bought it and there wasn't a market for the other stuff, the price would come
yes.
down. We're doing
And it
this to
wouldn't it
ourselves.
wouldn't just be called organic, it would be called fruit and veg, and then the other stuff would be pesticides or
Yes, yes, exactly.
another podcast if you fancy doing that another time.
Yeah.
Talking about myths and misinformation, is there any other ones around barefoot shoes that would be good for listeners to know? We spoke about the soreness and the knee pain.
Yeah, I guess one I get a little bit is that they don't last.
Yes, the
So people are worried
durability
that
of
they're
it.
not going to
Mm.
last because they're so thin. Um, and there's a couple of points on that. One is that sometimes they actually last longer because when you have not got a midsole of foam and squishy padding, that stuff wears down. And when that stuff wears down, those shoes become no good anymore. Whereas we don't have that stuff to wear down. So it doesn't really matter. You're already minimal and feeling the ground. And so there's not any of that foam to wear out. Um, and the other materials themselves, a lot of these shoes are very good quality. So yes, a lot of them are expensive, but they're handmade and they're very good quality shoes. And they really last in general as well as any other shoe. So it depends how well you care for them and how hard you are on wearing them. My daughter's shoes definitely don't last as long as mine do.
No.
Because she's a little harder on them. And then my 5-year-old son, he's a bit tougher again. But yeah, it definitely is not so that they're gonna wear out because of their minimalism.
Mm. Yes, I agree with the children wearing them a little bit more. With my son, my 5-year-old just li obviously lives in his barefoot shoes, and you can tell he runs through them, which is fine.
Yeah.
He's living his best life.
That's it. That's it. They do. They're a little bit harder on them, but I guess the more you can keep them out of shoes altogether, the better.
Yes. Um, do barefoot shoes work well in all climates? Because I am told, like my sister-in-law who lives in the UK, she's like, I can't buy barefoot shoes because when it's winter and it's cold and it's wet, the kids get
Mm.
their shoes get soaked through.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience myself because I've always lived in relatively warm places. But there are a lot of options for colder, wet, snowy climates now. A load of these shoes are made in Europe. So the winter shoes, they're way too wintry for our even our Australian winter. So they're made for snow and sludge. And yeah, there's loads that are out there now that can cope. They're not as thin as some of the summer options are going to be, obviously, because they also need to keep you warm. Um, and so there's a lot now with nice wool linings and Yeah, it's more waterproof materials.
I have seen those and I was like, oh, they look so cozy, but I would never wear them.
No, exactly the same.
I
Exactly.
don't. Um, Going back, I'd love to talk a bit more about the benefits of shoes for growing children and why it's such a good idea to have your kids in barefoot shoes as early as possible.
Yeah, yeah, I guess, I mean, we know that kids' feet aren't developed fully. And so the effect on them is greater than it would be on an adult. So whatever we put them in, it's going to make a bigger difference to them. And I remember it's quite a funny story actually. My nan owned a shoe shop before I was born.
All
And so
right.
my parents always said, kids have to have good shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, what they knew to be good shoes is different to what I now know to be good shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so we know we want them in something that's supportive of their health and their function. Uh, and so having something that has the room for their toes to splay, so they're not gonna have their feet permanently sort of misshapen, I guess, from being squished into small toe boxes. And because they are doing so much physical activity, they're running and jumping and climbing, and to have the ability, like I know my little one just going to the park, as soon as we get there and he goes to climb on something, he goes, I need to take my shoes off
Mm.
because he knows that the ability, the information he gets from his feet when he's climbing and doing all the crazy weird things they do, he knows how important that information is for him to work out where he is in space and to make sure he's safe and that sort of thing.
Yes, definitely. You can see them climbing all over the place, can't you? Especially little boys, like we were talking about.
That's it. And when I see the other kids at the park with these thick shoes and I know
Mm.
they can't feel anything, I'd feel like it's a recipe for them to slip and fall because they just can't feel it. It makes perfect sense
Yes,
once you realize it makes perfect sense.
yes, definitely. Especially someone who's gone from shoes that aren't barefoot and then going to the barefoot shoes and we can feel the difference, can't we? So they're definitely going to.
Exactly. And then the change of function that you have as an adult, I spent many years in an office and now just wishing that, yeah, that I had that thinking
Yes.
when I was little, that my feet would be so different and they would function so differently, and I would be a much better runner.
Oh, yeah. All the things, like we said, what we wish we knew.
Exactly, exactly. But you don't know until you know. So that's why
No,
we're here, right? We're
that's why
telling
we're
older
here.
people, yeah,
Yes, I wish I knew that rather than wearing those stilettos all the time. And since going, like I was saying to you, since going to barefoot shoes, I don't, because I've got bunions specifically stronger on my right foot, and I noticed there's no aching anymore. And my bunion used to ache all the time. And I'm hoping it's just going to improve more and more.
yeah, that's amazing. That like hearing stories like that, and I hear them all the time. It it really is so great when it's something so simple, like with bunions, and we're told that they're, oh, they're genetic or whatever. But
Yes.
you know, there's there's a little bit of controversy about it, I guess. But from the research that I've done and the information I've sort of listened to and read, it's, there is a possibility, there's a small piece of the puzzle that's genetic. You can have this hypermobility, which can cause it, but mostly for most of us, and I'd say more, especially women, have bunions than don't. It's shoes. Shoes are causing them.
Mm. Yeah. Everything leads up from your feet. If you work on your feet, everything else starts working, starts realigning
Yeah.
from your core, your pelvic floor, your hips.
Yep, exactly. And we're told sort of this is just our shape, and then that was part of my knee stuff as well. It's just part of being a woman and the shape of you. And I stood in the shower one day and I looked at my big toe pointed in towards my other toes and the way my arch flattens and my knee projects inwards. And then all I did is I just straightened my big toe and I
Mm.
looked down, and then all of a sudden my flat foot has an arch
Wow.
simply by straightening that big toe. That was the
That
only thing I did.
that would be a brilliant thing for listeners to do right now if they do have concerns with their feet. They could have a
Yeah,
go. now, just
Yep.
straightening their big toe.
And sometimes you can't do it on its own, like the toe just doesn't have that kind of mobility, but you
Mm,
can do it with your hand. You can force your big toe to be straight and just watch how much your arch lifts. And then in turn, what that did is then when I bend my knee, it projects straight ahead instead of pointing inwards.
that's amazing. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm going to try that on a couple of people with their
Yeah.
knee pain.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And sort of hips, like tight hip flexors have a bit to do with it as well. There's another one you can do with your hips that affects your arch. So the sitting down for long periods,
Oh,
and
big
having
one.
those tight hip flexors is a big one as well. But that was a massive one for me, just to change the way my big toe pointed to see that that flat foot and then the knee made a massive difference.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
always knew things happen from your feet up, but then just you explaining that simple thing just blew my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, me
It,
too, in the shower that day. I was like,
yeah,
wow,
you're just
why did
like,
I just spent $300 on a specialist and he did all these scans and he couldn't tell me this.
I bet, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It reminds me of when I was working at a chiropractor's and he was asking me to spread my toes. I could only do it on my right foot. And he was like, you can't do it on your left. And I was like, so what? And he was like, I need you to practice spreading your toes. And I was like, why? And he's like, everything comes from your feet. Imagine how you're walking with one side squished and the other just spreading normally, how
Yeah.
much changes in your body. And now I can spread toes and they're both symmetrical.
Yeah, amazing. And you wouldn't, yeah, without knowing that difference and the
No.
immobility that you would have in one foot, and like you say, the effect that's then going to have on the way you stand and the way you walk. I had even quite a few years into my barefoot shoe journey, I was having some trouble and went to a physio for something. And she discovered that my big toe, even I could bend it at the main joint. And this is going to show I don't know, I'm definitely not the podiatrist, I'm just the shoe store, but I don't know the names of these joints. But the first joint, but the joint halfway up my big toe doesn't bend at all. It had
Wow.
absolutely no movement in there. And that joint's there for a reason. It's supposed to
It's
be able to
crazy,
move.
isn't it? Those all those little joints matter.
Mm. Yeah. And so now that I practice it and I concentrate on it, I've been able to improve the mobility in that as well.
Wow.
So it
Oh,
can all be
amazing.
it can all be helped, like we feel like
Yes.
our bodies are a bit broken, and we've done all this damage, but it's not all doom and gloom. I do, like I say, a very small amount of work, and it makes a big difference to the way I move and the way I feel.
I've loved that you said that because we say that what we wish we knew, but we've actually been helping our body even by making these small changes over the 5 year period. We've helped our body.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
anyone listening now, if they feel like, oh, well, I should have been wearing barefoot shoes years ago. No, you can start now.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, my knee pain was so bad I couldn't sleep at night without a pillow under my knees. And last year. Yes, last year and the year before, I ran 100 kilometers in one
What?
event
What?
and had no knee pain at all.
That's one is how did you even run 100 kilometers?
Craziness, absolute craziness and determination, and an event suited to me where you run 6.7 Ks every hour on the hour, and it just kept on going.
You love running, don't you?
I do, not by the 17th hour, I must say there, and you have moments in there that you always go in and out of why on earth am I doing this?
Hmm.
Um, but trail running in particular is one of the fastest growing sports for a reason. It's good people and yeah, very addictive.
It is exciting though to push yourself to the that limit and to know how far you can go.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is, and the training that goes into it, and then the accomplishment. I mean, the first one I did because I wanted to run a marathon. I decided at some point that I'd like to tick off 42 kilometers, and I thought this event sounds like a way I can do that. And my training went really well, and I hit 100 kilometers, and went, wow, yep, that'll be enough.
You're just like, yeah, 100K, nice.
But yeah, the difference from the person I was maybe 3 years before that.
It's such a small time frame to make such big improvements.
Yeah,
really.
it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
It's an
forget that sometimes to
you,
look back and
yeah, you're amazing.
thanks.
You're
We
welcome.
all are. Our bodies are.
Yeah.
Bodies are amazing if we let them be.
It changes, doesn't it? They accommodate and then they can go back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Going back to the kids, what is it that mums should look for when choosing barefoot shoes for their
Yeah, so I
children?
guess the non-negotiables for me are those wide, flat, and flexible.
Hmm.
And you can add as possible after each one. So, you know, sometimes there are compromises because of cost, because of availability, um, but you want to look at what they're in and have them as wide, flat, and flexible as they can be in your circumstances. So, my almost teenage daughter wants something that looks how she wants it to look. So, and she has quite narrow feet, so I compromise a little bit on the width. But we stick with something that's flat and relatively thin so she can feel the ground. And um, yeah, certainly the younger they are, the more so I would be focusing on those things while they're still learning to walk, to have something where they really can feel the ground and let their feet move as they learn the world around them.
Yes, definitely. What do you think of Crocs?
Yes, so not the worst option, um, because they're wide. So
Mm,
I think that's one of the harder aspects of what shoes do to our feet to reverse is the shape that they become when they're squished. So um, I love that comfort is more of a priority, especially for young people now.
mm.
I see teenagers getting about in Crocs and trackies, and I wonder where that fashion was when I was a teenager and we were in
Yeah.
like heels and tight clothes
Oh
and midriff
goodness.
tops, and I'm
A
like, oh man,
giant, like the Spice Girls era when you have those
yes,
giant
the
shoes.
platforms. Yeah, what it must have been doing. But yeah, so the wideness of them is great. Particularly, I guess, a little better when they call it, I think, sports mode with the strap on the back. So then your foot is a little bit secured as well.
Yeah.
Because the problem, and people say, what about thongs? Because, your feet can spread out and they're flexible and thin. But the other important factor is that they're secured to your feet.
Mm.
Because otherwise you're gripping with every step you take, and that affects your gait, the way you walk, and your toes become, people can get hammer toes and such things because of that. So
So
yes,
you,
better when it's secured to your feet, but the thickness of that cushion and the stiffness is the issue in that you're just not getting any feedback from the ground. So the information put through to your feet is not there.
yeah, okay. So you could get them to widen the feet, but it's best to sort of minimize the use of the Crocs if you've
Yeah, I
got
think
them.
like if it was, yeah, in terms of kids and they wanted them because they want something super easy to slip on around the house. Um,
Or to
yeah,
go to the beach in.
yeah, yeah, not a terrible idea. My kids, and in fact, my whole family have earth runners,
Mm.
and they've replaced thongs for us because we didn't necessarily do Crocs, but we would live in thongs. Earth runners, it's one step more complicated in that you have to use your hand to pull the heel strap up.
Okay.
But the reward for that is that they're secured to your feet. They're super comfortable. They look great. And in summertime, we live in them.
Right.
I fought for my kids to wear them at school back when we were in WA.
Did you
And
win?
I don't know if I won, but well, in that they kept wearing them.
Oh, cool.
I
Yes,
don't know that
definitely
it was
then.
officially accepted, but
Right.
they did wear them. And being called Earth Runners, they are designed as runners. So when my daughter was told at Sport Day that she was supposed to have enclosed shoes, she would say, "No, they're Earth Runners. They're designed for running." So she
Ah.
sort of got away with that one. Um, they're about to start a private school here in New South Wales next year, and I don't think I'm going to win that one.
Oh no.
Yes, yeah, it's going to be a bit of an adjustment period for us, but
Mm.
they're black leather shoes. Fortunately, there's loads of options for barefoot shoes. It's just that they're going to have to be closed in, which I
Yes.
just feel bad for them in summer. I wouldn't wear closed in shoes in summer.
No, exactly.
Too hot.
That's actually a good point when it comes to school. What if you have those school restrictions where you can only wear certain shoes?
Yeah, they've pretty
Mm.
much ticked the boxes in the barefoot world now. So there's lots of options of all black, all white. I'm surprised by how many schools insist kids wear all white shoes.
I know.
But
It's like they're just going to be brown or
yeah, we
grey.
still loads of them coming up to school time. It amazes me.
Wow.
I'm so glad that's not our kids. But yeah, we have plenty of those and all leather, and it's sort of slightly formal looking.
Mm.
Um, so there's definitely options out there for school now, which is good.
Okay, brilliant. Um, can barefoot shoes help with things like plantar fasciitis? Because I had experienced plantar fasciitis in one foot after giving birth to my second son. And it was just the relaxing hormone. Everything was really flexy and it improved. It took time. And I was told not to wear my barefoot shoes anymore.
Mm. It's a really interesting one. Um, from for my amount of experience, I hear stories on both sides. So I hear lots of stories where people have said barefoot shoes have solved their plantar fasciitis, and I've heard stories where people have said they can't wear barefoot shoes because of their plantar fasciitis.
Mm.
Um, so I mean, saying it like that makes me think that it doesn't have anything to do with the shoes, um, because people on both sides are experiencing this, right? But the plantar fasciitis, the concept of it is, is that um, the plantar fascia that starts sort of towards the middle of your foot, around your heel. It wraps around your heel and up to the start of your calf. And that's where people are getting pain in the middle of their heel, um, from that. Now, personally, the experiences that I've heard is you want to soften and roll out the plantar fascia. Anybody that I've suggested that to, it's pretty much solved it.
Right.
Like in a really simple way, that using a roller and working that area has resolved the issue. So I guess the short answer is yes, people with plantar fasciitis can wear barefoot shoes. Sometimes the barefoot shoes will actually solve the problem. Sometimes there's something deeper, something else going on, right? Because it's not just about the shoes and the feet. Our whole body's connected. There's often something else going on that needs to be addressed,
Mhm.
and you need to look a little deeper.
Yes. Yeah. Everyone is different, isn't it? And it just depends, like you said, on your
Absolutely.
body and what's going on with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, do you have recommendations for our listeners for affordable barefoot shoes, especially for mums for their kids? If they're being a mum, you always want to help the kids first, don't you?
Yes. Yep. And they grow so quickly. So
Yes,
sometimes that's
exactly.
been it's been difficult for us, I guess. We're just trying to grow our kids market, partly because I just want kids in barefoot shoes. So
Mm,
I'm trying to grow our range. But I understand that buying expensive shoes when kids grow out of them so quickly is difficult.
yeah.
It's helped by, so one of our brands is called Saguaro.
Yes, that's what Monty
They,
lives in.
yes, yeah, and they're a fantastic shoe. They tick the barefoot boxes really well, and we've been really happy with them.
You.
Yeah, and they are a much more affordable option. So,
They're
and
brilliant
people
actually,
wear
because
really well.
yeah, and their return policy are brilliant. They're really interested in durability and what's going on with the shoe. And I had to replace Monty's inner soles.
Yep.
Um, and the inner soles would cost less than the actual shipping. And I messaged them saying, I only bought my shoes for him in June and he's run through his inner soles and I don't really want to spend more on the insoles than the actual shipping. And they said, when they've arrived, just let me know, and we can refund the shipping.
Oh, amazing.
Just
Amazing.
because, yeah.
They've been so helpful. And so we have the same. So we stock quite a range of saguaros now. And they're the same with us. If anyone has any issues, they're happy to replace them. But at the same time, they're not a throwaway commodity. They are working each model to make them better, and they take the
Mm,
feedback of anything and improve them because they're relatively new to the market. So there's always improvements to be made. So any of
mm.
those issues that come up, they work on improving the models, and so they've just gotten better and better over time, and they're a really good shoe.
They are
Um,
really good. Yeah.
but then I'll have other families. There was a family at our kids' last school who were in Vivo Barefoots,
Yes, me.
which are probably the other end, right? They're very expensive
Hmm.
for a kid's shoe. But she said we just buy them one pair a year and they last.
Yeah.
And her kids were pretty slow growing. I guess that's probably a difference. But she said they just buy them and they last forever. So they only need that one pair of shoes. They last for ages and then they can on-sell them. Or she had three kids, so they'll go down the family when the kids grow out of them
Yeah,
and you
nice.
get to use them. So yeah, it depends how you look at it, I guess.
And I actually took advantage of the Black Friday sales going on and things. So there's always something happening that if you really wanted some barefoot shoes, you could look into
That's it.
and
There's
sales are
ways
on
to
and
make it work for
mm.
sure.
Um, one last question. What advice would you give mums who are curious but hesitant about trying barefoot shoes?
Yeah, I guess we've tried to make things as easy as possible with free exchanges on our website. So
Okay.
I know the idea of buying shoes online is really hard. I know that it would be so much better if we could just have a store in every city and people could just go and try them on and see them and feel them
Exactly.
and talk to somebody. I absolutely get that. And maybe one day that will be the case. But right now, we are online, and that makes us able to have these shoes available to everyone all over the country. And so people are allowed to exchange for free. So if the sizing's wrong or they want a different model, you don't pay the return shipping back to us or the shipping for the exchange pair. And I
Brilliant.
find that really helps. And returns, if you get them and you decide they're not for you, then you just pay a $15 fee to return them,
Mm,
which
okay.
helps cover the shipping. And if you wanted, so we also have a flat rate of shipping. So if you want to order a bunch of pairs to try and feel and you do it in one go, you pay a pretty minimal amount of shipping and then you can do the return for anything you don't want. So just trying to get people to be able to look and feel and see them. But on that note as well, we are working on some more in-person events. So it's definitely a watch this space for later in the year. We are planning something very big and exciting so that people can touch and feel and learn more about them. But
Oh, wonderful.
yeah,
We'll
yeah,
let
that
you
would
know about
definitely
that.
be my thoughts is just give some a go. Kids rarely encounter any problems because their feet are already so natural and they're not having to undo damage.
Mm,
So I really don't see kids having many problems like they don't have to transition, they don't have to undo any of that damage on their feet. So they generally will just switch straight over with no problem. And usually we find kids prefer to wear them as well because they notice that they're more comfortable
yes.
and the way they feel. So kids oftentimes will actually kids that would never wear shoes before, they'll actually be willing to put these on, which is always helpful as a
And
mum.
is there a better way to look at your sizing? Like, should you be sizing up or sizing down? Like, should you be wearing socks? Shouldn't you? Just
No, not unfortunately not a firm rule on any of that. Some people will say, "Oh, now I've switched to barefoot, I have to go bigger."
mm,
I personally have had to go smaller. I used to always wear a 38, but I think I was wearing bigger shoes to compensate for the width.
yeah.
Whereas now in barefoot shoes, I only wear a 37 because they're the right length and they're wide enough to fit my feet. So it depends a little. And across brands, the sizing will be different. So we're constantly trying to improve our sizing info on the website. But the best way is in the product images, at the moment there's a sizing chart or on the product page, and to measure your feet
Okay.
or your kids' feet and go by the sizing chart. And I always say go by a combination of the sizing chart and your usual size. So if you've measured your foot and it's coming up as three sizes bigger than what you normally wear in a regular shoe, it's probably off. The measurements it's easy to get measuring your foot wrong. So
Mm.
I usually use that, and also think that it should be around your normal size, give or take a size.
Okay, cool. That's been really helpful. Um, so it sounds like mums, you can benefit from investing in yourself because the kids, like, they will adapt very quickly, but mums,
Yeah,
treat yourself, look after yourself, invest in some barefoot shoes.
absolutely, absolutely. And the kids, they can get away with less shoes too.
Yeah.
Wearing them less often, being barefoot as a kid, they can get away with it a bit more.
Yeah. Erin, it's been lovely having you on. You've given me so much information here, and I thought I knew a lot about barefoot, but it's been really, really helpful.
Fantastic. I'm glad. Like I said earlier, I could talk about some of these topics all day, but hopefully that's given a little bit of information, but not too much over over the
Yes.
top.
Is there anything that you want listeners to know before we leave?
Um, no, not anything in particular. I think we've covered a good amount of ground just to, I guess, know that it's a very quickly growing market. So what you see available today in 6 months' time will be different and more, and it's growing and evolving really fast at the moment. So to keep an eye on the space, and if it's something that you're interested in, to yeah to put the effort in and the work that it might require, because the result in the end is that you benefit for sure.
And you can then run 100K if you like.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Erin, so much.
No worries. Thank you.
Bye for now, listeners.